Hey everybody, Michael Snyder here, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is June 19th, and today we're taking a look at the slow-moving upper-level trough across the Pacific Northwest, centered over Idaho and western Montana. You can see the southerly flow ahead of the trough going to bring some severe weather portions of Montana up into Canada today. And on the backside of that, we're going to continue to destabilize the atmosphere with some pretty chilly air aloft for eastern Washington. Thunderstorm chance will remain there. You can see a little bit of sun breaks going on the east slopes of the Cascades, and I'm hoping for some sun breaks across the Puget Sound, Willamette Valley today. You can see a little bit of clearing coming down from British Columbia, so we'll see how much that clears out today. But as this slow-moving trough moves across the Pacific Northwest, it's going to bring some flooding concerns, I believe, to western Montana. We'll take a look at some of these precipitation amounts we can expect around there. And on into our extended, we could possibly be building a thermal trough up the west coast of North America, and this tends to bring us some pretty warm weather across Pacific Northwest as the flow looks to turn offshore at least for a day, maybe two. We'll take a look at some of those details and what kind of temperatures we can expect. Checking out Tropical Storm Bloss down here. It's been downgraded from a hurricane, and this will eventually go to a tropical depression, get absorbed. But on its heels, there's going to be another tropical depression forming called Celia, and eventually could become a hurricane by the end of the week as well. So active tropics continue down there off the coast of Mexico. Checking out the rest of the country, we have some heat advisories, some excessive heat warnings for Dakotas, South Dakota, Nebraska, portions of Iowa and Minnesota. Some hydraulic concerns with all this rainfall from from Montana down into Wyoming, and this is probably going to be continued on into western Wyoming tonight. I'm not sure why that's not already highlighted, but I believe there'll be some flooding out here with this slow-moving trough. We'll show some precipitation amounts coming up here in a minute. This is Tropical Storm Bloss, should be weakening and dissipate completely, but there's Tropical Storm Celia, or Tropical Depression Celia, sorry. It'll become a tropical storm, probably a hurricane as we go on and do the extended forecast there. Back to the Pacific Northwest, you can see the thunderstorm chances today for eastern Washington do exist, 2 to 8 p.m. Heavy downpours, gusty winds, small hail, and lightning, so heads up for that. Maybe a strong storm or two out there. Some pretty good downpours are possible. You can see that thunderstorm threat for portions of eastern Washington, Idaho, and the severe threat through Montana. They have that 2% tornado chance, some wind and some big hail are possible out there, so heads up if you're traveling out that way. And you can see that thunderstorm risk push off to the east a little bit as we go on in through tomorrow, as we start to dry out across some of the Pacific Northwest here. Now checking out Seattle, was 63 yesterday. The average high is 71. You can see that record high way up there at 94 degrees in 1982. But we're not going to be anywhere towards that. Our hope is to get back towards normal here in the next few days. But with the thermal trough, we could even get above normal here in the extended. We'll take a look at some of those temperatures here in a moment. Looking at the wrap here, now check out some of these precipitation amounts across western Montana and through Idaho there. That's would cause some pretty significant flooding. We saw what happened at Yellowstone there last week, and we're still getting that snow melt and this upper level trough moving very slowly that I'll show you here in a minute. Could really drop some heavy precipitation and really cause some potential flooding out there. This is the NAM 3KM. This is the Doppler radar loop, what it might look like. You can see these severe storms for the eastern portions, but look at this upper level low just kind of hangs out and really drops some precipitation over a prolonged period here. This could really be kind of nasty for some of these areas across western Montana here. This will help bust the drought, but again, on the flip side of that, could cause some severe flooding. So I'll watch that over the next day or two here. This is at 500 millibars, 18,000 feet, the really cold air aloft. You can see the north flow on the backside of the trough, southerly flow in front of it, and you can kind of see the slow motion of this system as it moves across Idaho, western Montana, and that's what's going to cause those flooding concerns for portions of Idaho and Montana. So taking a look here, let's see if the HUR agrees. You can see just residual showers for western portions of Washington, Oregon, and there go those thunderstorms for eastern Washington. Maybe some heavier showers, and there's some lightning as well, but that should be mainly east of the Cascades. But you can see these strong storms in eastern Montana, and you can see that upper level low spinning across western Montana. Again, that prolonged period of moderate precipitation could be a problem as we're going into Monday morning. So if you have concerns out there, you know anybody out there or traveling out there, heads up for that flooding concern. Now back to the extended forecast here. GFS is showing this potential for a thermal trough building up the coast. We'll look at the European here in a moment. And this is generally when we get ridging aloft, you tend to get a trough by default. You get high pressure out here, pushes these winds offshore and gives us compressional heating off the mountains and can warm us up pretty well across the Pacific Northwest, as just by default, this trough will form as these winds are flowing offshore here, and you get this low pressure that builds up the coastline. Now, taking a look here, this is the GFS. You can see how these winds start to turn offshore here as we go on in through Saturday and Sunday. Look at these offshore winds. And this makes all the difference. If you start to turn these offshore, you really get these compressional heating off the mountains here. So that's what we're looking for on in through this weekend. And the European is kind of showing something similar too. We'll look at that here in a second. But this is the GFS, and I wanted to show you this. I'm just going to jump right out to Friday here. You can see Seattle above average, starting to get into the 70s. Taking a look at Saturday, up towards 80 degrees for Seattle, into the 80s for the Willamette Valley. Now, the GFS is on the warm side of these runs, so I want to caution you there. The European is not this warm. As you can see, up into the upper 80s for Seattle on Sunday. And as we go in through eastern Washington, you see the same thing. You see the hundreds down into California here. And as we go into the extended here, you can see 90s into eastern Washington, but I caution against getting too excited about this yet. The European does not show us getting this warm. So we're going to stop there with the GFS. But here goes the European building that ridge also, and kind of shows that thermal trough activity up the coastline there. It does turn the winds offshore at times here, and that would warm us up at least for a day or two. As you can see, that thermal trough, the high pressure slides down on the east side of the Rockies there. Now looking at the winds, this is at 925 millibars, about 2,500 feet. You can see kind of the offshore component to these winds as it moves across the Pacific Northwest on Friday. And as we go through Saturday, check out some of these east winds going through the Fraser River Gap and through the over the Cascades, through the gorge, and out over the Pacific Ocean here. And this would bring some compressional heating and a warm day on the day Saturday before we finally turn back on shore flow here as we go through later in the weekend and on into early the following week. So the European is probably a much more accurate forecast as we cool off after a couple warm days. But checking out the European here, this is for Friday. You can see up towards normal, maybe even low 70s for Seattle. But we start to really warm up through California here. And then as we go through, this would be Saturday night. Look at this, up towards 80 for Seattle, even on the European here, in the 80s for the Willamette Valley. The immediate coast would stay fairly chilly, but it depends, again, on how strong these offshore winds are, because it can still warm you up all the way out to the coastline here. But look at California and the deserts, Nevada really are going to be baking under this pattern here. And then you can see we start to cool down a little bit as we get into Sunday, at least for western portions, as the onshore flow would return. So we'll see just how strong this thermal trough will be. We'll see how long we can continue the offshore winds and how long the heat will go on. But it looks like we're probably going to get above normal temperatures coming up here. Now, looking at the GFS for SeaTac, you can see going on into next week, and it has, several days into the 80s. But I caution against getting excited about this at this point, but we should definitely be warmer than we have been coming up here. This is the national blend of models kind of showing these mid and upper 70s. So this is kind of a blend of the European and the GFS, etc., as we go on in through next week. And so that is definitely going to be a welcome relief to some people who are waiting for summer to arrive here in the Pacific Northwest. This is the European showing this nice warm days for Saturday, Sunday, Monday next week as well for Seattle, Tacoma, as well as bringing us up towards average on Friday, then warming us up a bit, and then it kind of goes towards climatology and the extended, which is to be expected. Here's Portland. Look at that. The European even calling for 380-degree days for Portland. So not bad coming up here, folks. The GFS showing, several 80-degree days as well. It tends to be the warmer of the models, at least in these last several days. This is for Wenatchee. You can see the warm up coming too, probably starting this week and probably extended on through into early July. So yeah, thunderstorm chance for eastern Washington, strong storms for eastern Montana. This upper level low is going to bring some flooding concerns starting tonight into tomorrow for portions of Idaho and Montana. Some pretty good precipitation rates are going to be coming. I expect some flooding, warnings, some hydraulic concerns to be posted by the National Weather Service over the next, probably at some point this afternoon. But yeah, if you guys have any feedback or anything you guys want to see or explained, I might even talk about the monsoon here coming up once we calm down a little bit. We can't even get monsoon moisture all the way up into the Pacific Northwest. It happens every couple years. And so maybe I'll go over that in one of my educational videos. Once the weather calms down a bit, I'll start doing more of those educational videos too. I have one in works about the Puget Sound Convergence Zone. And yeah, I'll pick some other things out to do too. But yeah, so enjoy that. We're going to be drying out across the region today. So enjoy that. We're probably going to be warming up later on this week and on into next weekend. So that's something to look forward to as well. And yeah, so I will do this again tomorrow. We'll check out those flooding concerns. We'll take a look at that thermal trough and see just how warm we're supposed to get. And we'll do that again tomorrow. So I'll talk to you then.